happening now in downtown Miami. Black Hawk choppers soaring through the night sky, but this is only a drill. Night Team's Mike Marza has some pictures for us explaining what's going on. Mike?
Still, if you've seen one of these drills, it really is like a scene out of one of those action movies, choppers stalking the sky of downtown Miami and the like. Let me show you what's happening right in the shadow of the Adrian Arch Center. Police right now have blocked off Biscayne Boulevard, but we believe that is largely because the Miami Heat game is about to be let out at the AAA, which is nearby. But actually, you know what, Nick, if you take a look, swing back over here. This may be involved in this training or not. Again, let me tell you what all of this is that we know of. It's a joint military training exercise involving local police, also military. They're doing some training exercises partly to meet some of the requirements that they have to do, also to prepare for the military side for some overseas drills, and also so they can make sure that all of their equipment is in check. And Nick, let's swing back around and show you the sky, because we've been hearing some blades of choppers in the distance. People up on the balconies have been taking some video of this. Let's show you the first piece of video as someone shot some video of some of these choppers, military-style choppers, flying over 395 in downtown. This was last night. They shot all of this video. Now, the sight is impressive, but just imagine if you could hear some of the activity that was happening here. Let's take a listen to the second piece of video.
Holy
All right, so some blank rounds of gunfire pinging off the high-rises here in downtown Miami. A photographer actually from Atlanta doing some work here in the Brickell area, also in downtown. He had no idea what was happening, knew nothing of this drill, and that's what he saw. Listen to what he said.
helicopters came by, and I was filming those, taking some pictures, and then I just heard all this machine gun firing, and I hit the deck. I didn't know what to expect, and it was one of the loudest things I've ever heard.
Okay, so here within the past hour or so, we saw some official boats with some lights flashing. Unclear on exactly where all of this is going down. We know it's in the greater Miami area, also Miami-Dade County, but police being pretty vague about where exactly they're doing all of this and also for how long. They do say that public safety is their #1 priority, so that's why you see a lot of this activity at night, and they want us to tell you that, again, it is just a military training exercise. But hey, if you happen to see some of this stuff going down, take some video, also take some pictures and send it our way. Send it to 7@WSVN.com. We want you to be safe while doing it. Live in downtown Miami, Mike Marza, 7 News, Night Team.
Holy shit.
Maybe you heard it, maybe you saw it. I did. A lot of you on Facebook and Twitter said you did too. Lights and sounds booming through the darkness of night in parts of South Florida. The noise that is leaving many of us sleepless in the city.
Well, tonight we're showing you exactly what it was and what was going on. The Night Team's Mike Marza is live in Coconut Grove with the story. Mike?
Lynn, so the U.S. Department of Defense says it gave some notice to people in this area near Miami City Hall. A lot of those people include tourists that were down here visiting. So just imagine you sort of come down to South Florida, want to relax, nestle into your bed, and just after you click off 7 News at 11, this happens. It's like a scene out of an overseas military mission, but this is Coconut Grove.
We saw like flashes and shooting, and they the Black Hawk had like a Gatling gun in the front, and you could hear it open up and fire off. And
for Art Tomczak, the 3-day U.S. military training exercise with Miami police added entertainment to his trip from Buffalo, New York.
We got a thing in our room that said that they were going to have maneuvers, but I figured it would be like the next day or something like that, but not in the middle of the night.
But witnesses say the training soared in the skies over Coconut Grove overnight.
All of a sudden I hear this zoom, and I go, oh, airplanes. I wonder how close we are to airport.
The simulation's so real, unknowing witnesses blew up social media, like Carlos, who tweeted, "What's up with all the planes and the big black helicopter flying over Miami? Feels like a Abbottabad." He's referring to the site of the deadly raid on Osama bin Laden in Pakistan last year. Some people even called 911.
A lot of people have called in a panic. It's no need to panic.
Similar training lit up the skies over Brickell last year. This time, it happened near Miami City Hall. Not so good if you're trying to sleep, but a bonus to tourists like Art heading back to Buffalo with yet another South Florida story.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool story. Yeah, my son will get a kick out of it. That's for sure.
So as Art makes his way back up to New York, the U.S. Department of Defense here and Miami police say at least this particular training exercise is now complete. So South Florida, sleep tight. Live in Coconut Grove, Mike Marza, 7 News, 19.
The Obama administration is openly escalating its campaign against private gun ownership and shaking up the top ranks of the military command structure. But is it also preparing to make war on the American population? According to a person identified as a former senior military official, the answer to that shocking question is yes. World-renowned educator and human rights activist Jim Garrow says that the source is a man regarded as one of America's foremost military heroes. He told him that President Obama is using a new litmus test for determining who will stay and who must go among top-ranked military leaders. That test is whether they will fire on U.S. citizens or not. Dr. Garrow says that his source made the disclosure in order to sound the alarm over the administration's plans, but while Garrow will not yet reveal the identity of the source, it's important to note that Dr. Garrow himself is a man of considerable accomplishment. He is the founder of the Bethune Institute, which has established hundreds of schools throughout China. 3 years ago, he was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize for his work through a group called Pink Pagoda, which combat gendercide in China. That is, the practice of rescuing baby girls who had been abandoned or targeted for infanticide because of the government's one-child policy. He was personally involved in helping to save the lives of more than 50,000 children in China. Dr. Garrow, we'll talk about your source in a moment, but first, could you please explain what exactly is this new litmus test being used by the Obama administration?
Well, I think what's been expressed to me is that officers at the highest level are being asked a hypothetical question in which they're asked, would you be able to follow your oath of office and follow the command structure and the orders given you by someone in a rank above you, up to and including the commander-in-chief, if a scenario developed where a group of people would not submit and lay down their arms when ordered to, could you find yourself obeying the order to fire on American citizens? That was what was presented to me.
Now, Dr. Garrow, your source is someone who is considered a legend in the U.S. military. Could you please describe how you met him, why we should believe him, and why he contacted you to describe this so-called litmus test?
Well, years ago, I used to sit on the board of a magazine out of Washington, D.C., named Crisis. It was a Catholic magazine. And through that involvement, I got to know people like other board members. William Bennett, he was Secretary of Education. Zbigniew Brzezinski, Alexander Haig, Bill Simon, who signed the dollar bill. These are the sorts of people that I got to know. And so as a result of associating with them, I was introduced to this gentleman, who at that time was, in fact, still in the military at the highest rank. And it was during my traveling across the country that I ended up spending a night at his home and got to know him fairly well, and was in fact introduced at a football game, I guess the homecoming game of his alma mater, where he was, it was he was, I guess, the honored guest. And when he got up to speak, he dragged me up to the podium with him to introduce me. He was that kind of person, not putting himself in the forefront, but always considering others. So I held him in high esteem then, and when I received a phone call from him expressing real concern about what he had just heard from an officer that he had brought into the military and encouraged to get into the military as a young man, who had also risen up high in the ranks, and explained to him that he was being forced into submitting to this litmus test, and frankly he had failed and had resigned his commission. So he had called this gentleman to let him know what had happened. And the gentleman who phoned me knew that the message needed to go out. It was a serious, what he felt, breach of the Constitution of the United States and the Second Amendment.
So your source heard it from another gentleman who it was actually applied to, who then resigned his position.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so now let's talk about the Counterterrorism Center for a moment, because at West Point they've published a paper identifying so-called anti-federalists as domestic terrorist threats. Do you believe that similar views inspired the Obama administration's litmus test?
Well, you have to, I think you have to understand, and I know you do full well, but the audience should understand that the way Obama does things is he always speaks to his own narrative. They speak to their own philosophy. They support their own belief system, their own worldview. So everything you see him doing is setting up a reinforcement of his belief. And I believe that is a socialist Marxist belief. And that is what he is doing when he says, I'm going to take away your guns because look at the awful situations. Well, it's his political minions who have said quite clearly, you never let a crisis go to waste. And what you are seeing is that he's doing just that, taking crises and making them to his own advantage and manipulating even children to the point that his point is being made.
So you're saying that even in the case of Sandy Hook, he's taking advantage of those children who were brutally murdered in that grade school, and he's taking their deaths and using them to his advantage to follow through with his agenda?
Yes, and the agenda is about controlling the American public. It has really nothing to do with guns, although with his obligation, the debt obligation that America has, China is quite concerned that behind every blade of grass, as Yamamoto said, there will be a gun. And they do not want to have to face the ire of the American public. I think once they understand that Obama is selling out the natural resources of the country. And by the way, these are all parts of the discussion that I had with this.
And I want to get into that in a moment. I want to talk about China and the debt, because I know you have a very unique perspective on that working there. Let's talk about, from these conversations that you've had with your source, is there reason to believe that the Obama administration is actually conducting something akin to an ideological purge of the military with this new litmus test?
That's the belief of this gentleman, yes. And that's what he is not afraid of, but has great concern that America is at the edge of seeing totalitarianism techniques used to cull the ranks of people who in good conscience believe that the Second Amendment rights or constitutional rights are in fact sacrosanct. He obviously does not believe that, and his moves to date show quite clearly that he does not believe in the Constitution.
So you're saying there's sort of a separating of the wheat from the chaff in the military ranks to find who will actually fire on American citizens? Is this what your source believes?
That's exactly what the source believes, and his fear is that the American public are going to be victimized to an ideology that is far from American. In fact, what he has expressed to me very clearly is that the moves that this man has made, Obama has made, clearly show that he does not understand the American psyche or the American culture. It's not what he is. It's not. You begin to wonder: is the man even American?
Well, are you saying that he's just detached from the American culture? Our own president? Absolutely,
absolutely. Listen very carefully to what he says. You would think you were sitting in a socialist Marxist indoctrination program in some university.
Now, I want to ask a question here about your friend, because he's obviously seeing what's happening in the United States. Is it similar to developments in other countries that have descended into dictatorship?
Oh, this is the pattern. It is the pattern. What has been totally unexpected, though, was that that the media would play such a large role as a cheerleader rather than as being the fifth estate, the examining arm of the public, you know, exposing the things that are wrong. But what you have seen is a failure on the part of that media to do just that, to bring out the facts. They have become more an arm of the government, an arm of the propaganda mill of Obama and crew.
You're speaking of the national media syndicate?
Yeah, the mainstream media, I think you call them.
Well, let's talk about the dictatorship for a moment, because the American people probably don't see what could be this dictatorship. Do you think that this dictatorship is simply wrapped in the red, white, and blue, Chevrolet, apple pie?
Well, it seems to be, but the moves themselves, you know, never listen to the words of Obama. Watch what he does. If you're sucked into believing the rhetoric, believing the propaganda, then what you're doing is you're looking at the left hand while the right hand's stealing your pocket, you know, stealing what's in your pocket. And that's quite deliberate. It's a Barnum and Bailey huckster style, and that's what you see with Obama. He very clearly is one of the great communicators when he's got his teleprompter working, and so there's magic there. But the minute you start to watch what he does, you know, you put aside the rhetoric, watch what's done. The two are antithetical to one another. And his voice of reason and his patriotic stance just fades.
Doctor, in his second inaugural address, Obama finally abandoned any pretense of moderation, openly embracing collectivism and treating the Constitution as a quaint relic. Does this suggest that he has consolidated power to the point where he can be candid about his ideological intentions?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting when you looked at when he ran for election the first time, and then somewhat differently in the second occasion. The first time he was selling something, and he was selling sizzle all over the place. He used the great rhetoric and the great words that bespoke patriotism and love of family and love of just America generally. He spoke those things, but now that he's no longer trying to sell something, he is now in a position where he can ram whatever he wants through. And so now what you're seeing is the beginning signs of a despot. What he did in that speech was remarkable, because he threw aside all of the niceties and proclaimed very clearly that he was a progressive socialist, and to all of America without blemish and without embarrassment. And so I think you no longer have a warning about what he could be. You now have full in your face a declaration of what he is.
Doctor, if America's turn towards dictatorship is as advanced as your source believes, why hasn't the national media warned the public about the danger?
Well, it's as if, for them, the national media, as if they're listening to a dream. It's their dream come true. It's what they practiced. It's what they learned when they were in journalism school, when they went to university and they learned to become socialists and Marxists. The dogma that they're hearing is one that they're well versed in, they believe in totally, and Obama is merely their spokesman. So why would you question something that was in fact the thing that you really believed in? Obama is presenting a lifestyle, a worldview that is totally different than the good Christian parent, father of a family, who is just as fresh as apple pie and ice cream. That's no longer what you're seeing. He's thrown it aside, and the cheerleaders now, instead of examining very carefully what he has said in the past, which is entirely different than what he is saying and proclaiming now, if they really examined it and showed the public that they in fact could be what they should be, the safeguarders of liberty, you'd see a different reaction. But in fact, they are, at the best, to describe them would be to say that they're cheerleaders for Obama and apologists.
In your career as an educator, Dr. Garrell, you have worked with the children of high-ranking Communist Party officials in China. You know many members of the country's ruling elite on a very personal basis. Do you see any similarities between their worldview and that of the Obama-era administration?
Yes, but you know, if this was a mutual admiration society where the communists and the socialists in China were looking at Obama and thinking, wow, isn't it wonderful that this new American leader is bringing the communist revolution to his own country, that'd be one way to look at it. But in fact, it is only Obama's view of China and the socialism there and the communism there, the collectivism, now that the word is out, progressive collectivism. In his view, that is admirable. That is something to be looked not only at, but copied and brought into being in America. But the Chinese have a totally different view of Obama himself personally, who they call Monkey Man, by the way, on the street, and they deride him. He's held as a joke. He's also looked at as a traitor because very much the communists believe in one thing: you're loyal to your country, and they see him as a traitor to his own country. So there is no respect. Obama loves China. He loves what he sees there. The Chinese do not like, in fact, they despise Obama.
So the average Chinese citizen on the street believes that our president is a traitor to the United States.
Yes, yes, absolutely. The ones who understand the ideology of capitalism and the ideology of a free republic, and you know, studying the work of the founding fathers of the United States and the Federalist Papers, because they do, by the way, in their classes, take this in universities. They understand what really is America. And when they see what's going on with Obama, they see just a repetition of what has gone on in China. So there is no honor to their way of thinking in what Obama is doing.
Now I want to talk about the economy for a moment, because the U.S. government has borrowed more than $1 trillion from Beijing in order to fund its operations. What impact has that had on America's domestic, political, and economic affairs?
Well, now you're getting down to part of our discussion with this military leader who asked me to come forward. And his fear is that very much because, you know, it's the piper picks the tune, and the person who holds the purse strings, the debt of America, is the one calling the shot. So China very much wants America to be disarmed. That's first and foremost. The Second Amendment is quite a problem for them, because how could they come in? How could they assess, as they have, by the way? In 2011, there were two groups from the Bank of China and from the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China, who came into the United States looking at the resource sector and giving valuations in oil and coal and natural gas, and places like Kansas, you know, the breadbasket of America, putting valuations on it, looking at settlement of the debt of the United States to China. So now you're talking trillions of dollars of debt, indebtedness, and their mission at that point in time was to find out, hey, what are the values that we can place on this? Obama has allowed a number of special economic zones to be set up, very much like Shenzhen, China, with Chinese nationals. And they're there for very good reason, and at the invitation of Mr. Obama. But in the end, it is a sellout of America and American resources, because that is what China wants. It needs clean coal, which they do not have, and America has it in abundance. They need oil, which of course, is in abundance all across the United States and out into the Gulf. Now, China needs that, and the debt can never be repaid.
Well, let me ask you this about, because if the debt can never be repaid, is China concerned with the American citizens rising up and overthrowing the United States government because of the Second Amendment, therefore the debt would never get paid?
Well, they're afraid that the promise made to them that they will be allowed to have the resources, oil, gas, and coal, and then farming ability, that they'll be allowed to have that in exchange for payment of the debt. They're afraid that an armed American citizenry would rise up and wouldn't stand for it. And they don't want a war.
I understand now. Dr. Garrow, why does your source wish to remain anonymous? Does he ever intend to go fully public with his identity?
At this point in time, I don't think he does, but he's also being very careful because the fact that this has gone out, the fact that it's become viral on the internet, for example, there are detractors, there are people who say it's false, but apart from that, there are people who are waking up. This is an encouragement to the military personnel. This is an understanding on their part that it's going to be okay to resign commissions or okay to wait and stand firm. And that's the message that needs to go out.
Doctor, with all the talk of gun grabs and states stepping up to nullify federal laws like Obamacare, do you see this litmus test as a prelude to a civil war?
I think the American public, if they really knew what was going on, they would be preparing for a civil war. And Obama is quite surprised, and the socialists in Washington are very surprised at the reaction of the American public, who have gone out of their way to armor themselves and arm themselves to an unbelievable degree. They did not think that this would take place. And so I believe that they're quite fearful that the American public is now even more able to rise up and toss off a government that is repressive or headed toward dictatorship.
Doctor, with your international work in China with pinkpagodagirls.com, you've rescued over 50,000 children. How can people track your progress and support your efforts?
Well, there's an ability for them to give if they feel like God is leading them to give at PayPal. If you look us up, we're Pink Pagoda LLC. Pink Pagoda LLC. If they feel that they want to do that, we don't encourage giving because we are a business and God has granted us great profitability. So we pour our resources into our work for Pink Pagoda Girls. But thanks for asking. Appreciate that.